Welcome back into the Dynasty lunch break. I'm your host, Garrett Price, and we've got a pretty awesome show for today. Now, I know some of you guys are like, wait, it's Tuesday, not Thursday. Yes, we had a little bit of a scheduling snafu, so I will not be available Thursday, but I was like, instead of just canceling, why not just pick a different day? So we are doing it today. This is Tuesday, June 25th, and of course, like always, we're going to be getting into all the questions you guys have, answering trade questions, draft questions, all of that kind of stuff. But then, even more significantly, obviously, well, not more significant. That sounds so mean. Jeez, Garrett, what a jerk. All right. Also significantly, you might have heard that we are also going to be doing some research today into the top fantasy football players of the 2000s. Now, I'm going to be doing a series on YouTube covering this exact topic. But I'm not just going to do the top 5 guys of the 2000s, top 10, top 25. I'm doing the top 100. So it'll be broken down in 10 separate videos where we go 100 and all the way through 91, and then 90 through 81, all the way down till we get the top fantasy asset of the 2000s. So I think it's going to be a super fun video, but I figured today I'd hear from you guys. We would talk about the top fantasy assets of the past 24 years and talk about who we think the best one was, who we think absolutely deserves top 10 consideration, and who was just a flash in the pan, but we shouldn't really consider a top 100 player. So I think this will be truly a fascinating conversation, and I'm really, really excited to get into it. So might be a few less people today because we're thrown off a little bit on the time, but I think it is going to be a blast. So Steven Jr., what's up, man? Good to see you, buddy. Hitman96, is Burks droppable? I think it depends on your league size and settings, but more than likely, yes. It would depend on who's available, who I'm adding in its place, but he's shown for the past 2 years that he can't do much, can't seem to stay healthy, not making the big plays that we saw in college, and then on top of it, they added 2 more wide receivers to this group on top of DeAndre Hopkins. So right now, it looks like he's the 4th wide receiver on the team. If I have a team where it's a 30 roster spots or something like that, I'm probably holding just in case something crazy happens. But for the most part, if you're limited on roster size, yeah, go ahead and cut him. I have zero issue with that at all. Yeah, I'd have absolutely zero issue with that. So feel free to drop him if that is something that you need to do for, an upside young player like a Tyrone Tracy. If you're trying to decide between a Tyrone Tracy and a Treylon Burks, yeah, then drop him. Bearded Jebediah says Brian Edwards droppable. I think Jebediah is the same one that was getting on me the other day about Brian Edwards. Yes, Brian Edwards level droppable. Yeah, that was one of our big misses. The entire analytics community, the entire film community was all in on a guy like that, and he just didn't pan out. But past 2 years, we didn't have a guy that hard this year. For me, it was Troy Franklin that I was much lower on than consensus. But the past 2 years, it was Burks and Quentin Johnston. Both those guys didn't have the ball skills necessary. They were just kind of fake good athletes, but they weren't as good as we really thought. And we were out. And so I didn't have any shares of either player coming on rookie draft season. And I don't think I have any Troy Franklin this year. I don't think Troy Franklin is quite in the same category as those two. Slightly different, but overall, I have this similar type of feeling. Steven Jr. says, Superflex 10 or 12 team Superflex tight end premium. Start 10. I have a middling team in need of a quarterback. I have an offer to get Purdy. My Ferguson and a 25 first for Purdy would leave me with only 2 tight ends and one we can't really trust. if it's a super flex, Ferguson's been great, but I'm absolutely taking Purdy. You can find a way to get a guy like a Ferguson, Cole Kmet, David Njoku, Pat Fryer. Like, you can find those guys. It's tough to get two legitimate starting quarterbacks, so I would make that move for Purdy. Dan says, I'm going to the fantasy football Q&A featuring David Carr in August. What kind of questions would you ask a former quarterback about fantasy? That's a really good question. I would do it more on a tape perspective. Like, if I'm watching tape on rookies, what types of things should I be looking for to determine whether or not they could have some good fantasy football success? Like, I would look at, because chances are he doesn't really know much about fantasy. I doubt he's in the weeds like that. So for me, I would much rather be asking him questions about actual players and what to be looking for, and then translate that on my own to fantasy. Traded my late first and early sixth in a startup for 211, 411, 7-2, and a 25 first. Yeah, I like that. That's a good move. That's a really good move. I like that a lot, actually. That's the type of move that I love to make in startups, where I'm getting extra assets. And honestly, guys from the second round move into the first round all the time. So love it. Jonathan says, hey, Garrett, we know that Puka was a good prospect and obviously put up good numbers. I feel good about his future as an asset and cornerstone, but do you think last year was his ceiling? Is he a sell? I'm probably the wrong person to ask on this. I've always been a little bit lower ever since his breakout. I've been lower on Puka than consensus. Chances are there's a good chance last year was his high water mark. Could he repeat and be a top 5 fantasy receiver? Sure. But the likelihood of him doing that feels pretty low, just based on a lot of different things. I think, one, there was a reason he was a later round draft pick. I don't think that was – obviously, he should have been drafted higher, but I don't think he's this elite player as far as athletic ability, ball skills, things like that. Like, he's not. He's in a fantastic situation, though. So as long as the situation's there and Cooper Kupp doesn't require 1 billion targets again, he's still going to have some very good seasons. But the second Sean McVay's gone, the second Matthew Stafford's gone, I think this will change a lot for Puka Nacua. So for me, he would be a sell. Steven, QBs are Stroud, Aiden O'Connell, Winston, Browning, Dobbs, Brissett, and Mac Jones. Yes, definitely get yourself the proven quarterback. I finally made a live episode. Dylan, welcome in, my man. Welcome in. It's good to have you. Hitman, thoughts on Dejon Edwards? I like the kid. I thought he ran really hard. Undrafted prospects have a long road to hoe, but he does a lot of little things right. I could see him being a guy that's on a roster for a while, but never really having any fantasy value. So as much as I liked the kid and as like an NFL coach, I would like him. It's hard to see a lot of fantasy upside. MBL says traded Fields for a 27 first. 12-team Superflex, Burrow, Love, Minshew, Rodgers, and Fields. Or should I try to counter to add something or just keep Fields because the value's so low? It's more on how you feel about Fields. I feel like he's eventually going to be a legitimate starter again. And when he starts in the NFL, we know he's a top 12 quarterback just because of the rushing upside. So for me, I would want a little bit more, or I would want to hold. But if you don't think he's got a real shot to be a legitimate starting quarterback again, then get out now. Like, get out now. Get what you can while you can. So I think that's kind of how it comes down to for me. How do you specifically feel about him? All right, let's get a couple more in here, and then we'll start talking about the top fantasy assets of the 2000s. I'm really excited for this YouTube series, so I really want to talk to you guys. Josh says, my 14-team Superflex tight end IDP league, 2 new owners going into year 2. There's been so many trades. At what point is just trading just a trade too much versus actually accepting trades that make sense. Yeah, there is a point in fantasy where we do start to get, especially this time of year where there's not a lot going on, not a lot of news. We do have a tendency to make trades just to make trades. If you're not feeling like you're actually getting value or acquiring a player that you really need for your fantasy team, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't make trades just to make trades. Dylan says, I traded Rashad White and a 25 fourth for a 2025 first and third. Thoughts? Love it, Dylan. Absolutely moving him for a first-round pick. And you also got a move from a fourth to a third on top of it. So I think that's a great deal. Joseph Gross says, I got the SFB email from you, but haven't gotten anything about joining the league. The website says I'm signed up. Any idea when the invite will be sent? Yeah, Joseph, I sent all of that over to Rich. He's talking with them. So I will follow up with Rich today and make sure that he has coordinated. But he does for sure know about it. And I know that he has let them know the first time before everyone was signed up. So I'll make sure that he follows up again and does that. All right, let's get into the crux of this show. And we're talking about the top fantasy assets of the 2000s. Now, I'm going to be doing a list of 100. So there's a few different categories that we got to look at. All positions, well, I guess all positions that we're used to. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I'm not worrying about IDP and things like that. Well, all four of the positions are eligible. I'm looking at two main points. One, longevity. How good or how long were they a usable fantasy asset for? Two, what was the peak? Like, are we talking multiple top 3 seasons? Are we, that kind of thing. So those are the two main criteria that I'm looking at as far as how to determine whether or not somebody should be considered in the top 100. And look, it's only been 23 seasons so far worth. Or I guess 24 if you're counting the year 2000. So 24 seasons that we're going on. So there's going to be lots of players, especially in the 75 to 100 range where maybe they were, 1 or 2 year wonders, or maybe they had a long career but didn't quite have the peak. But then obviously once we get towards the top, they're going to need to have both of those things pretty strongly in order to climb up the board. Oh, Patty, what's up, man? Good to have you. So what I would like to hear from you guys is, I know you guys haven't spent a bunch of time doing research on this, but off the top of your head, who would be some of the players that you would consider in your either top 5 or top 10, like guys that you think are probably no-brainers? They have got to be towards the top of this list. They've got to be, because I'm going to be doing 10 videos. And I would love for you guys to watch them. Let me know what you think once I do them. But I'm going to be doing 10 videos, releasing one a day, going from 100 all the way down to the top fantasy asset of the 2000s. So would love to hear you guys. Who's in your top 10? Who are your top 10 guys? Or maybe you're like, I only feel comfortable with 5. Or let me get to 15 or whatever you guys want. But I want to hear your top fantasy assets of the 2000s. Who would you have? Now, I have a just off the top of my head list. But that is with literally no research. I shouldn't say literally no research because doing the QB1 and RB1 episodes, that did kind of help cue me in on some players that I should absolutely be considering. Dustin saying the volume is low. Interesting. It looks like it's pretty solid on my end. But maybe we can try to turn it up a little bit. Let me see. How's it looking for everybody else? Are we a little low on the volume, or is it looking pretty good? So let me know on your guys' end if volume's a little low or not. And I'll see what I can do to try to raise that. Let's see. We've got, okay, yeah, it looks like it's pretty high on my end, But I could be wrong. Maybe it's not. I could easily turn it up a little bit more, get it a little bit higher. Okay. Looks like for other people. So maybe on your end, it's a little low. So maybe it's something on your end, Dustin. Sorry, buddy. All right. So we've got a few people. Let me get it. There's a couple more questions. I'll try to get to these real quick. Single quarterback league. Current quarterbacks are Burrow, Purdy, Jones. Would you trade Swift for Jaden Daniels? Would leave me with Breece, Saquon, Achane, and Najee. No, you already have Burrow, Purdy. I'm not sure that Jaden Daniels' upside is much more than Joe Burrow, so I would probably not. Peter said, made a couple deals in the last 2 weeks. Superflex tight end premium. Amon-Ra St. Brown, J.J. McCarthy for Mahomes and an early second. Also in a 1 QB, no tight end premium, sent Ferguson and Roschon in a late third for Dalton Kincaid. Love the Kincaid one for sure. That one's easy. Amon-Ra McCarthy for Mahomes. Ooh, that's a really difficult one. I would probably go with Mahomes. But yeah, that's a really close one. I would have a really, really hard time deciding on that one. I would probably go with Patrick Mahomes, though. So, all right. So, Josh is saying, so give me your guys' list. Top fantasy assets. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Larry Fitzgerald, Mike Evans, Adrian Peterson, Frank Gore, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, CMC. There's one big one, one really big one. Maybe we'll even get crowned at the top when it's all said and done that I think you're missing there, Josh. Let's see if anybody else has it. Let's see what everybody else has. But there we go. LT, Steven Jr. has it. LT, I think LT is going to, I would be shocked if I do this and he doesn't end up as at least a top 3. At least a top 3. Probably, I'm guessing he'll end up as my number 1 overall, but I got to do the research. Got to do the math, baby. CMC's been really good. Adrian Peterson was really good. Peyton Manning's run was bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. Steven Jr. saying Peyton Manning, AP, LT, Fitz, Harrison, as in Marvin Harrison Jr. or Sr. Gonzalez, which would be Tony Gonzalez. Travis Kelce, another one that will likely be in consideration towards the tippy top of all of this. He's just had an unreal run at tight end and just such high scoring. Such high scoring. So he'll be a fun one to kind of look at. Other names on my list. All right. So this is, once again, this is with very, very little research. Guys that I think could be potentially top 10, top 15 type of guys. We've said a lot of them already, but I'll just repeat them. And this was literally with like 5 minutes of thought right before this. LaDainian Tomlinson, Christian McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey, Marshall Faulk, Peyton Manning, Priest Holmes, Shady McCoy, Jamal Charles, Antonio Brown, Travis Kelce, Tony Gonzalez, Calvin Johnson, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Le'Veon Bell, and Adrian Peterson. Those are the guys towards the top of my list as of right now. Another one that I should probably put on there, Derrick Henry. He's had a great run. Yeah, Derrick Henry should be towards the top there. Gronk's an interesting one. We talked about him on the top 6 tight end episode. He had, when he was good, he was really good, but much more inconsistent than a lot of these other tight ends, which made it a little tricky. Josh adding Antonio Gates, Julian Edelman, DeAndre Hopkins. Definitely Gates and Hopkins, I think, deserve to be in the conversation. Julian Edelman, surprisingly, only one wide receiver 1 season. Only one. Wes Welker had 4, but only one wide receiver 1 season for Julian Edelman. Calvin Johnson, yep. Calvin Johnson absolutely deserves to be on that list. Ooh, CJ2K. Probably. I mean, he'll make the top 100. He'll definitely make the top 100. Top, like, 25 consideration probably. He'll probably be in that conversation. I don't know if he'll make it. Moss is a tough one. So let's take a look at Moss, because obviously he had an awesome run. Awesome run with the Patriots, but it was really just that one season that was incredible. A lot of his happened still in the 90s. So let's see where his numbers actually line up. Let's switch over here. Let's look at Randy Moss. Obviously, he'll make the top 100, but does he consider top 25 consideration for the 2000s? So he had 2 absolutely bonkers seasons right before. So he had 69 receptions, 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns as a rookie. Then another 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. But he still has he's probably going to end up being top 25 still, because look at what he did still in 2000, 15 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. Then he had the 1,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2003. Minnesota, last season in Minnesota, 13 touchdowns, only 700 yards. But then he went to Oakland, not a lot of production there. But then he goes to New England and just has an unreal season. Has another good one there. So yeah, my guess is he'll be on. I don't think he'll make top 10. I don't think he'll make top 10. Oh, the echo's back? Why? All right, let me switch back to this. I wonder why. It's so weird. So weird. I don't know why. All right, let's see. Brandon Marshall, yeah, absolutely will be up there. It was the 90s, yeah. But he had a lot in the 2000s. Vincent Jackson. So we're just going to go by the years that they produced, not necessarily the years that they were drafted, because then that would eliminate a lot of guys. So the years that they produced is what I'm going to be looking at. Always had an appreciation for Julio Jones. Don't have any stats in front of me. Probably wasn't as impactful as I remember. He did have some really impactful seasons. He had a lot of wide receiver 1 seasons, and I think there's a good chance he'll make the top 25. I can't say that for certain, but I think there's a very good chance that he'll end up making the top 25. Torrey Holt, I don't know if he'll make the top 25. Steven Jackson, he had a nice run. It was only like 3 or 4 years where he was like really that guy, but those years were really good. Really, really good. Then we're going to have to weigh in, like, where do you rank the one-year wonder guys? But that 1 year was really freaking good, or those 2 years were, like Larry Johnson, for example. Larry Johnson had a run where he was a monster. David Johnson, another guy. Short run, only had like 2 or 3 years, but those 2 or 3 years in Arizona were unreal. Then we look at a guy like Peyton Hillis. He had one monster season, but it was literally just one season. You know, obviously if it's 1 year, I'm going to rank him quite a bit lower, but those 2 to 3 year guys are tough. Sean Alexander, I think, is likely to be a top 25 guy. Cam Newton could definitely be in that conversation. Jordy, I believe, had three seasons. All right, I'm going to try again, but I'm going to switch pages. Let's go to Fantasy Pros. I won't do Pro Football Focus. We'll see if that's different and if we still have the echo when I switch over. All right, I'm going to try it. If not, I'll switch back. Let me know right away. How does this sound? Am I echoing? Am I echoing like crazy, or am I not? Because I'll switch back right away if so. I'm waiting. Don't want to be annoying. Yeah, beast mode for sure. DeMarco Murray, Darren McFadden. They'll make probably towards the middle to the end of the list. They'll make it Hines Ward, Peyton Hillis, Trent Richardson, Muscle Hamster, Doug Martin. Still echoes. Okay. All right. There should not be a mic on that, but I don't know. I'm not sure why. I will do some investigation. I will get to the bottom of this, and we will figure out why this is happening. I promise. We will. But for right now, I am not quite sure. Actually, as I think about it, wonder if I have... All right, we'll just stick here. We'll stick with me. You guys are stuck with my face. I'll be doing some investigation because I'm having other issues too. My one camera doesn't want to work. OBS is mad at me. It's mad at me. They're like, you're not a tech guy, and you should be a tech guy in order to use this platform. And I'm not. So it's mad at me. All right. Maurice Jones-Drew, absolutely. Maurice Jones-Drew will definitely be one of those guys that will be in consideration for top 25. I don't know if he'll quite make it. So see, now I want to show you guys the stats, but now I got to be the guy that's like looking it up on my phone. Issues while streaming live. You're right, Josh. It's the worst. It's the absolute worst. So Maurice Jones-Drew. What would Jones-Drew? Let's see. Over the course of his seasons, he's only 39. Still such a young pup. Yeah, he had a run of about 3 seasons there. Maybe 4 seasons where he was really, really good. 08, 09, 2010, 2011. He broke 1,300 yards 3 times during that campaign. He had a 12 rushing touchdown season and a 15 rushing touchdown season. So, yeah, he had some pretty good seasons. But then when he fell off hard. He got injured in 2012, only had 86 yards. Came back in 15 games, only had 234. And then his last season, 43 yards. So he fell off really, really bad. But he'll 100% make the top 100. My guess is he'll be more in like the 50 range, if I had to guess. Probably in that 50 range, but we'll kind of have to wait and see. That's what I'm excited about. Like, the top tier guys, I don't think are going to be as fun just because they're so good and we already know that they're going to be there. What's going to be fun is that, like, middle range, that 40 to 75 range of guys that had a few really good seasons, but just was never able to do it long enough, or had really long career, but just didn't have a lot of top tier production. That's where I think it's going to get the most interesting when doing all this. So, you know, like, I'm struggling with where a guy like Frank Gore might end up. You know, Frank Gore played forever, but I'm curious how many RB1 seasons he really had. Let's see. Frank Gore stats. All right, so I'll look him up while we're talking. Deshaun Jackson. Ooh, I think he'll make it. He really only had 2 really big seasons, but I think he'll end up making it. Yeah, so Frank Gore is going to be a tough one. In his second season, 1,600 yards, 8 touchdowns. Had a lot of 1,000-yard seasons, but never led the league in rushing. Never led the league in touchdowns. Not one time. So that's where it's going to get kind of tricky with a Frank Gore. is how's he going to fare? Tony Gonzalez, he'll end up being, because he ended up being the top tight end for a long time. So I can't imagine not putting him in the top 25 for me. And I know it was a different time and they weren't putting up as many points, but he was still the top dog at tight end for such a long time. I think he had like 15 or 14 of his 17 seasons. He was a top 6 asset at the position. So pretty impressive. So yeah, Tony Gonzalez will more than likely make my top 25. But yeah, I struggle a little bit with where to put Frank Gore. How do you weigh longevity versus top end production? 1,600 total career yards, 81 touchdowns. Obviously, he's going to make the list. But is he a top 25 guy? Is he a top 50 guy? Like, where does he kind of fall in that range? Peyton's going to be towards the top for sure. He was so good for so long. I can't imagine him not being in the top 5. LaDainian Tomlinson, like I said, I think he's going to be top 3. I think Christian McCaffrey. Why can I not say his name? I think Christian McCaffrey will also be a top 5 guy. Josh Gordon. Yeah, that's a fun one. I think because of that one incredible season, there's a good chance that he at least makes the top 100, but it's not going to be very high. Like, I think he'll make it, but I don't see myself ranking. Like, he led the league in receiving yards in only 14 games, by the way, in 2013 with 1,600 yards. Had 9 touchdowns on that season, but then didn't have he didn't have another season over 800 yards. Not a single season over 800 yards after that. So that's where it gets real tricky. Where do you put a guy like that? Sorry, don't mean to be yawning. That'll be a tricky one. Andre Johnson, Arian Foster, both for sure. They will for sure make the top 100. Justin Blackman. That's another interesting name. Justin Blackman. Let's see. His one season wasn't good enough. I don't think he'll make it. He only had one season, and it was 800 yards for 5 touchdowns. That was his best season as a rookie. So, yeah, he's not going to make the cut. I can say that pretty confidently, that Justin Blackman won't make it. But then you have guys like Alfred Morris. Like, Alfred Morris, his career best was his rookie season. Had a huge year, 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns. He was okay in his second year and third year. 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. He didn't have a lot of receptions, which kind of hurt over that time span. But, like, I think he will probably make it, but I don't think it'll be super high. Oh, yeah. Larry Fitzgerald, he will likely be a top 10, if not for sure a top 25 guy. Absolutely for sure. He was so good for so long that he's going to absolutely make the top 25 without a doubt. Top 10 is where it'll be iffy. You know, how do you weigh a guy like him versus Antonio Brown, who had more tippy top tier seasons, but maybe not quite as many overall top 12 wide receiver seasons? It's kind of tough. Steven Jr. says, hear me out. Tyler Lockett. I bet Tyler Lockett will make the top 100. I don't think he's going to make the top 25, but he's going to make the top 100. So Tyler Lockett, almost 8,000 yards for his career. He has 4 seasons over 1,000 yards, 2 10-plus touchdown seasons. Has a season with over 100 receptions, or actually at 100 receptions. Oh, yeah. Clinton Portis will make the list. Clinton Portis had a run there where he was a monster. Like, Clinton Portis might even be in consideration for, like, top 25. Because he had a run there where he was just a monster. Rookie season, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns. To go along with another 33 receptions, 364 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Sophomore campaign in 2003. 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, had 5.5 yards per attempt, had another 314 receiving yards to go along with his 38 receptions. Then you look at his third season. 1,300 yards, only 5 touchdowns, so a bit of a disappointment there. 40 receptions, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. Then another 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. He had another 1,200-yard season with 11 touchdowns. Like, he was really, really good. Really, really good. I think he might end up being top 25. He had a run there where he was really, really good. So Andrew Luck will be a tough one. Andrew Luck had some really, really nice seasons, but he didn't have a lot of years. Yeah, I think he'll make the list probably, but I don't know that he's going to end up making the top like 50. He'll be more in that like probably 75 to 100 range, if I had to guess. Portis was hilarious in post-game interviews too. I lived outside of D.C. for about a year while he played. Yeah, Portis was a fun one to watch. We haven't talked a lot about Sean Alexander. Sean Alexander, I get it. He fell off the face of the earth at one point, but he had an amazing run there. Drafted in 2000, didn't have a great rookie season, but then listen to these numbers. 1,300 yards, 14 touchdowns. 1,100 yards, 16 touchdowns. 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns. 1,600 yards, 16 touchdowns. Then 1,800 yards, 27 touchdowns. What? That's bonkers. Even had a receiving touchdown that season. Like, unreal season. And then he just kind of fell off. Had 800 yards, 700 yards the 2 following seasons. Was a little banged up those years. So, yeah, he had a monster. Miles Austin, I don't know if he's going to make it. Kurt Warner, I think, could. Miles Austin, I'm not sure he will. So, guys, I hate to do this. Just getting a text from my wife, something I got to take care of real quick. So I'm going to have to cut the lunchtime a little bit short today, but I'm glad that we were able to sneak this in. I'm glad that we were able to still hang out despite the technical difficulties, despite the echoes, despite the cameras and all of that kind of stuff. Glad we were able to move it to today. Still got to hang out with you guys for about 40 minutes. So truly appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Obviously, like I said, won't be here Thursday, but I will be here next Thursday. So next Thursday, mark it on your calendars. It'll be the first Thursday in July. I will be back with the normal time for Dynasty Lunch Break. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. We'll talk to you later.